Nora, 32 years old, walked into her family's Thanksgiving dinner holding her Grandma May's famous pecan pie. She stopped the moment she saw the dining table. 23 relatives were already seated, but her chair was gone. No one spoke. Her mother, Marcia, barely glanced at her before saying, "There's no room for disappointments." Nora didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply stepped forward, placed a sealed envelope on her father Frank's plate and said, "Happy Thanksgiving. I finally understand why you hate me." Then she stepped back, steady on the outside, shaking on the inside. Everything was about to break open. Inside the envelope were DNA results, answers Nora had searched for her entire life. But those answers had opened an even bigger question, one no one at that table could explain. To understand how she got there, you have to go back 6 months earlier to the day Grandma May passed away. The funeral home smelled like lilies and floor polish. Nora arrived an hour early because Grandma May always taught her, early is on time. She wanted to help arrange flowers, greet guests, do anything that felt useful. Anything to honor the only person who had ever truly loved her. Her mother, Marcia, was already inside, directing the funeral workers like a commander. Without lifting her eyes from her clipboard, she said, "Nora, stand by the entrance and greet people." Nora frowned. "I thought I'd sit with the family." Marcia finally looked up with that same cold, blank expression she always wore around Nora. "The front row is for people who were close to your grandmother. Jenna is flying in from Boston. She needs the space. You understand?" Nora understood perfectly. She always did. Even though she spent every Sunday with Grandma May, she was pushed aside again, unwanted and unseen. The funeral service was beautiful. Jenna, her younger sister, cried gracefully in the front row while Marcia held her hand like she was the only daughter in the world. Nora stood in the back near the guest book, watching her family grieve together without her. After the service, relatives lined up to offer condolences. Some hugged her, some shook her hand, most forgot her name. Then a man in a gray suit approached her. "Miss Blake?" he asked gently. "I'm Mr. Collins, your grandmother's attorney. She left something specifically for you. But I must verify a few details first." As Mr. Collins walked away, questions crowded Nora's mind. What had Grandma May left her? Why did it require verification? Thoughts from the past 10 years flooded back. At 22, Nora had been a junior in college, double majoring in English and business, making the dean's list, dreaming of law school. Then her mother was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. During the family meeting, her father Frank said, "Someone needs to stay home with your mother. Jenna can't interrupt her medical program." Everyone looked at Nora. She agreed instantly because she always did. And that decision cost her everything. Nora spent the next 2 years taking Marcia to chemotherapy appointments, radiation sessions and follow-up scans. She cooked meals Marcia couldn't taste, cleaned bathrooms after bad days, held her mother's hair back until there was no hair left to hold. When Marcia finally recovered, the doctors called it a miracle. Nora asked if she could return to school and finish her degree. Frank didn't hesitate. "You're 24 now," he said. "What's the point? Get a job. Help with bills." Jenna graduated medical school 4 years later. The family threw a party with 60 guests. Nora washed dishes in the kitchen alone. One afternoon, Nora searched through the old photo albums hoping to find a picture of Grandma May for her birthday card. She noticed something strange. Jenna had an entire book of photos. Dance recitals, soccer trophies, graduations, vacations. Nora counted only 3 pictures of herself. A baby photo, a kindergarten shot, and a blurry Christmas picture where half her face was cut off. Confused, Nora asked Grandma May why this was. Grandma May held her hand and whispered, "Your mother has a secret, sweetheart. And until she faces it, she'll keep punishing you instead of herself." Nora didn't understand, not yet. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, Nora's phone rang at 7 in the morning. "Miss Blake, this is Mr. Collins," the voice said. Nora sat up quickly. "I apologize for the delay," he continued. "Your grandmother's instructions were very specific. The envelope could not be released until 6 months after her passing." Nora's heart pounded. Why 6 months? She wanted to give you time to grieve before facing the truth. That afternoon, Nora met him at his office. He handed her a thick envelope sealed with red wax and Grandma May's handwriting. "For Nora. When you're ready to know the truth." Inside the envelope were 3 items. A handwritten letter from Grandma May, a medical document with a laboratory logo, and a photocopy of a birth certificate where the father's information had been blacked out. Nora read the letter first. "My darling Nora," it began, "I am sorry. I carried this secret for 32 years. You are not Frank's biological daughter." Nora froze. Grandma May explained how she noticed the strained way Marcia behaved around Nora, and how Frank looked at her like she was a stranger. 2 years earlier, Grandma May collected DNA samples and sent them to a private lab. The result was clear: 0% probability that Frank was Nora's father. Grandma May had confronted Marcia, who begged her to keep quiet. She said Frank would leave her if he found out. She said it would destroy Jenna's life. She swore it was a one-time mistake. But Grandma May didn't want Nora living in the dark anymore. She ended the letter with, "I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to tell you sooner. You deserved love, not punishment." Nora sat on her apartment floor surrounded by the documents, her whole life rearranging itself in her mind like a puzzle finally revealing the truth. Nora stared at the DNA report again and again. 32 years of confusion suddenly made sense. The coldness, the distance, the way Frank always spoke to her like she wasn't his child, because she wasn't. But one question now burned hotter than all the others. Who was her real father? That night she spread everything across her living room floor like crime scene evidence. The birth certificate with the blacked-out section. The lab results. Grandma May's letter. Why did she hide his name? Nora whispered into the quiet room. Fear sat heavy in her chest. Whatever the truth was, it wasn't small. The next morning, Nora knew she had two choices: bury the truth or confront it. She could stay quiet, show up to Thanksgiving like nothing happened except being invisible forever. Or she could speak, the truth Grandma May believed she deserved, and risk losing the family she'd spent her whole life trying to belong to. "The truth doesn't need permission," Nora whispered, repeating her grandmother's words. She photocopied the documents, placed the originals in her small fireproof safe, and sealed the copies inside a fresh envelope. She wasn't going to Thanksgiving for revenge, she told herself. She was going for answers. Thanksgiving morning was bright and cold. Nora parked behind Jenna's white SUV in her parents' driveway. The house looked picture-perfect with wreaths, candles, and holiday decorations. The envelope sat in her coat pocket like a live wire. Marcia opened the door before Nora could knock. "You're late," she snapped. "I'm 10 minutes early," Nora answered calmly. "I said an hour early," Marcia replied, already turning away. Inside, the dining table was fully set: white china, glassware, and handwritten name cards. Nora circled the table twice. "Mom," she said quietly, "where is my seat?" Marcia didn't look up. "We ran out of room." "There are 24 seats," Nora said, counting them again. "I only see 23 name cards." Jenna walked in from the living room, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. "The last seat is for baby Sawyer," she announced proudly. A tiny card read, "Baby Sawyer, coming soon." Nora stared at it. "You replaced me with someone who isn't born yet?" Jenna's smile faltered. "Don't be dramatic. It's symbolic." Nora felt the envelope burning in her pocket. One more chance, she told herself. One last chance for them to treat her like family. She followed Marcia into the kitchen, her patience thinning. "Mom, we need to talk," Nora said as the kitchen door closed behind them. Marcia kept basting the turkey. "Not now," she replied. 32 years, Nora continued. "I did everything you wanted. I dropped out of school to take care of you. And now you can't even give me a seat." Marcia turned sharply. "You dropped out because you couldn't handle school. Don't rewrite history." Nora's voice was steady. "You asked me to stay. Jenna had a future," Marcia snapped. "You had a job. Helping this family. That's what you were good for." The words hit Nora like cold water. Nora felt the envelope press against her ribs as Marcia's words echoed in the kitchen. "Something is missing in you," Marcia added coldly. "I tried to love you like I loved Jenna, but you've always been different." Nora stared at her mother. "Something missing in me," she repeated slowly. "Or something you're hiding?" For the first time, Marcia's face flickered with fear. Then she quickly masked it. "I don't know what you're talking about." Before Nora could respond, the kitchen door swung open. Frank stood there holding a whiskey glass. "Everything okay?" he asked. Marcia answered sweetly, "Just fine." Nora brushed past them and left the kitchen. 20 minutes later she found Frank sitting alone in his study, staring out the window like he always did when avoiding responsibility. "Dad," she said quietly. He didn't turn. "What is it, Nora? Why didn't you say anything when Mom told me I'd eat in the kitchen?" He sighed. "Your mother handles the seating. And you're okay with that?" Nora asked. "Your own daughter being treated like a servant?" Frank finally looked at her, but his eyes held the same emptiness she'd seen for years. "You're your mother's daughter," he said. "I'm yours too," Nora said, her voice tightening. Silence filled the room until she heard the clock ticking on his desk. "You're your mother's daughter," he repeated, this time with a weight she couldn't name. "Dad," Nora whispered, "is there something I should know?" His jaw tightened. "Drop it, Nora. Today is about Jenna. Don't start anything." She stared at him. "I've never started anything. Not once." He didn't answer. Nora walked out with a new certainty burning in her chest. Frank knew something. Maybe not everything, but something big. And he had chosen silence over truth for 32 years. By mid-afternoon the house buzzed with relatives. When Nora opened the front door for Aunt Helen, the older woman immediately pulled her into a warm hug. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Nora swallowed hard. "They didn't give me a seat at the table." Aunt Helen's jaw tightened. "Of course they didn't. Marcia hasn't changed." Nora lowered her voice. "Before Grandma May died, did she ever talk to you about anything strange about me?" Aunt Helen went still. "Why do you ask?" Nora took a breath. "Grandma left something for me. She said I deserved the truth." Aunt Helen looked away, blinking rapidly. "She sent you the results, didn't she?" Nora froze. "You knew." Aunt Helen nodded slowly. "I drove her to the lab. She made me swear not to say a word until she was ready." Nora's heart pounded. "Who is my real father?" Aunt Helen's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know. Only Marcia knows that. But whatever you're planning tonight, be careful. Your mother has spent 32 years burying this secret. She won't let it surface quietly." Nora nodded. "I'm not looking for a fight." Aunt Helen met her eyes. "No. You're looking for the truth." Aunt Helen led Nora onto the back porch where the November air stung their cheeks. "It started about 3 years ago," Aunt Helen said softly. "Right around the time you began visiting your grandmother every Sunday." She folded her arms against the cold. "Your mother wasn't around, so your grandmother finally had time alone with you, really alone. She noticed the way you flinched when talking about Marcia, the way you spoke about Frank like he was a stranger. She saw things the rest of us ignored." Nora swallowed. "Grandma May confronted her, didn't she?" Aunt Helen nodded. "More than once. But Marcia denied everything," Aunt Helen continued. "She accused your grandmother of trying to ruin her life. They didn't speak for 6 months." Nora stared at the wooden porch boards, her mind racing. Aunt Helen sighed. 2 years ago, your grandmother said she couldn't stand watching you suffer without knowing the truth. She collected a strand of your hair and a glass Frank drank from. She sent them to a private lab." Nora felt her throat tighten. "And the results came back exactly as you saw them, 0%. Aunt Helen placed a gentle hand on her arm. "She wanted to tell you immediately. But then she got sick," Aunt Helen whispered. "She didn't want to leave you alone with that truth while she was dying. She planned everything, the delay, the letter, the lawyer." Nora blinked back tears. Even in death, Grandma May had been fighting for her. By 3 o'clock, guests filled the house. Laughter, clinking glasses, holiday chatter. Yet Nora felt like she was floating outside her own body. Suddenly Frank tapped his wine glass. The room fell silent. "I want to thank my beautiful wife, Marcia," he said, raising his glass, "and our daughter Jenna, who makes us proud every day." Nora's name never came up. Jenna rose slowly, smiling as she held her sparkling cider. "We have an announcement," she said. "Most of you saw it on Instagram, but yes, Evan and I are expecting. Baby Sawyer will be here any day now." The room erupted in applause. Nora watched Marcia carefully. The surprise on Marcia's face was unmistakable. Jenna must not have told her she planned to name the baby after Grandma May. For the first time, Nora saw fear flicker in her mother's eyes, because she couldn't protest the name without revealing the truth she'd buried for decades. It was the smallest crack, but a crack nonetheless. A few minutes later, Marcia turned toward the kitchen. Nora, go make sure the serving dishes are ready. Let the adults enjoy the meal. Nora stared at her. I'm 32, she whispered. But Marcia was already walking away. Nora stepped into the kitchen, gripping the counter as the conversations at the table drifted through the door. She heard an aunt whisper, "Such a shame about Nora. Marcia told me she couldn't finish school." Another voice added, "Some people just don't have motivation." Then Marcia's voice floated above the others. "I tried to help her, but she was always different." Nora felt something inside her break cleanly in half. Nora pressed her back against the kitchen wall, listening to the voices that had defined her entire life. "Poor Marcia," someone whispered. "Imagine raising a child like that." "I heard she scares men away," another voice added. "Hard to be around someone so off." Each sentence landed like a bruise. It wasn't just Marcia. It was the entire family repeating her story, the one she'd crafted for 32 years. Nora wasn't seen as a person. She was a problem, a burden, a disappointment. And it wasn't because of anything she'd done. It was because of a secret she never asked to exist. She thought about all the holidays she'd stood quietly in the background. The birthdays where Jenna blew out candles while Nora cleaned up the plates. The graduation party where she washed dishes while everyone toasted Jenna's achievements. The family vacations where Nora took the photos but was never in them. Every memory sharpened into painful clarity. This wasn't accidental. Marcia had built a version of Nora, a difficult daughter, a quiet failure, so no one would ever question the way she treated her. It was a defense strategy. A shield. And tonight that shield was going to crack. If they pushed her, she would speak. When the main course ended, Nora carried out Grandma May's pecan pie. She placed it gently on the center of the table. The golden crust glistened under the dining lights. Marcia's head snapped up. "What is that?" she demanded. "Grandma May's recipe," Nora replied softly. "Her pie." "I didn't approve that," Marcia snapped. "We have catered dessert." "There's room for both," Nora said. But Marcia stood abruptly. "Nora, take it back to the kitchen." "We don't need it." Nora held her ground. "It's Grandma's recipe." Marcia's voice rose. "You don't have a seat at this table. What makes you think your pie belongs here?" The room went silent after Marcia's outburst. 23 faces stared at Nora as if waiting for her to crumble. But she didn't. She set the pie down gently. 32 years, Nora said quietly. "I've spent my whole life trying to understand why you hate me." Frank shifted uncomfortably. Jenna frowned. Marcia scoffed. "Oh, stop being dramatic." Nora reached into her coat pocket. Her voice didn't shake. "Grandma May wanted me to know the truth. And she wanted all of you to know it too." Several relatives exchanged confused glances. The envelope felt like fire in Nora's hand. Nora walked to the head of the table and placed the envelope in front of Frank. He stared at it like it might explode. "Happy Thanksgiving," Nora said softly. "I finally know why you never looked at me like your daughter." Jenna gasped. "What are you talking about?" Nora stepped back so everyone could see. "The DNA results are inside. 0%. Frank is not my biological father." Chairs scraped. Forks dropped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Frank opened the envelope with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the paper. The color drained from his face. "It's true," he whispered. Marcia stood so quickly her chair toppled. "This is a lie. Nora forged it." But Aunt Helen rose behind her. "She didn't forge anything, Marcia. I was with Mom when she collected the samples." The room erupted with murmurs. Jenna looked horrified. "Mom? Is this true?" Marcia's eyes darted wildly. She searched for sympathy but found none. "I made a mistake," she cried. "One mistake. And every time I looked at her, I remembered it." Nora stared at her mother. "So you punished me every day of my life because of your mistake?" Marcia covered her face, sobbing loudly. Aunt Helen stepped forward. "Marcia, you lied to Frank. You lied to all of us. And you abused Nora to cover your guilt." "I did not abuse her." Marcia shrieked. But there was nowhere to hide." Frank rose slowly from his seat. "Marcia, I suspected when she was 5. Her blood type didn't match ours." Nora's breath caught. "You knew." Frank's voice broke. "I suspected. and I was too afraid to confirm it. Nora felt something inside her close forever. So you chose silence, she said. You chose yourself over me. Frank didn't deny it. Jenna stood shakily. Dad, she's still your daughter. He shook his head. She isn't. Not biologically. Nora let out a small laugh, sharp, painful. That never mattered when you needed someone to sacrifice their future, she said. The relatives watched in stunned silence. For the first time, Nora didn't feel small. She felt clear. Thought. Mom, Nora said steadily, who is my father? Marcia's sobbing stopped instantly. She stared at Nora with wide, terrified eyes. I will take that secret to my grave. Nora nodded once. Then I'll find him myself. A ripple of whispers filled the room. Nora picked up Grandma May's pie and stepped away from the table. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, she said softly. She walked toward the door. No one stopped her. No one called her back. Jenna followed her into the hallway, tears streaking her mascara. Nora, wait, please. You can't leave like this. Nora turned. Why? Jenna swallowed. Because you're still my sister. No, Nora said gently. I was your shadow. Your backdrop. But never your sister. Jenna looked crushed. Will I ever see you again? Nora opened the front door. Maybe. When you learn to see me as a person. Then she walked out. A week later, Nora moved into a small apartment above a bakery. Aunt Helen visited often, bringing warmth and hope with her. Nora enrolled in night classes, finally reclaiming the future she'd been forced to abandon. The investigator located a man named Thomas Reed, 62, retired, living 20 minutes away. He had no idea Nora existed. One evening, Nora sat at her kitchen table holding a message from him. I recently learned I may be connected to you. I'd like to meet if you're willing. Nora smiled softly. I choose my life now, she whispered. For the first time ever, she felt free.